And the first question stands in the name of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker,
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Is the government considering any changes to funding the New Zealand Superannuation Fund? If so, why?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, because under Section 42 of the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Act 2001, the Treasury must each financial year recalculate the government's required contribution to the fund.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. What is the Prime Minister's response to comments by the Chief Executive of the Superannuation Fund, Adrian Orr, and to Brian Fallow in the Herald, that it's totally misleading to claim that New Zealand is borrowing to pay for the Superfund, given that he himself has made that claim?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's factually correct. The government will be borrowing, if it continues to make payments into the fund at the prescribed rate, it will be borrowing $50 million a week to make those funds. And while one doesn't want to take away from Adrian Orr's performance or that of the New Zealand Superfund, let's put a few facts on the table. Between 1 July 2007 and 31 January 2009, the Crown borrowed and paid into the fund $3.4 billion. All of those contributions have been lost, plus a further $1.3 billion. The fund has lost $4.7 billion in 19 months.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister in that answer saying that Brian Fallow and Adrian Orr are wrong to state that it's arbitrary to draw a circle around any one item around the government's outlays and say that that is funded by debt, and that you could equally claim that the tax cuts are funded out of borrowing?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
In answer to the first part of the question, yes.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister understand that, given National's track record in the 1990s and tampering with the Superfund in 1991 and 1999, that his and Mr. English's recent comments both undermine the certainty that people need around planning for their retirement future and the political consensus that super should no longer be a political football?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me make this assurance. Because the Leader of the Opposition seems to be unable to ask the obvious question, I'll ask it of myself. Is the government considering the payments into the fund? The answer to that question is yes. As part of the budget process, I have asked the Minister of Finance to get the Treasury to look at the possibility of temporarily contributing a lesser amount to the fund. This is expressly provided for under the section of the Act. Now, let me say, Mr. Speaker, in answer to the question that the Leader of the Opposition asked, there will be no change to superannuation payments for New Zealanders. They are not linked to this fund. I've made it quite clear that if superannuation was to be cut, and I'll make the same claim here in the House today, I will resign as Prime Minister and resign as a Member of Parliament.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the problem is the Prime Minister won't be Prime Minister by the time the problem arises. Mr. Speaker, supplementary question. Does the Prime Minister understand that in 20 years' time, 1 in 4 New Zealanders will be in retirement, and that it therefore makes sense, while the baby boom population is still in the workforce, that we pre-fund that scheme to ensure that the entitlements that he promises can actually be guaranteed for the future?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the Leader of the Opposition's question, yes, I understand that, and yes, I support pre-funding of superannuation. But the government the government faces some very difficult challenges, and that means that over the course of the next few years, the government will be borrowing tens of billions of dollars. Now, the question for the government is simply whether, for a period of time, it pays less into the fund to take the pressure off its borrowing requirements. I have asked the Minister of Finance, as part of the budget process, to consider that option.